Hi, everybody. I'm Sarabeth Berk, and this is Becoming More Than Your Title, where I talk to really exceptional and interesting professionals who are more than their job titles. Because what does a job title even mean anymore? They've become this sort of empty title that we use because it's been a tradition and a convention in the workforce. But that's not really defining who we are. Our professional identity is so much bigger than that. And that's what I study. So I am a hybrid professional and I research and write about hybrid professionals in the workforce. Now, what is a hybrid professional? If you haven't heard me speak before, well, simply, it's someone who is integrating their multiple professional identities together and working at the intersection of those identities. Now, this is different than just an expert or a generalist, and here's why. Hybrids are actually merging and marrying their identities together. That interconnected space becomes a whole new identity, where a generalist might just wear many hats or be multi-talented or multi-passionate. That just means they do many things, but those things may not be related to each other. And experts, we know, just focus on one thing. They go really deep. So the hybrid is a little bit of both. They might have many areas of expertise and some general knowledge, but they're weaving all of that together. And hybridity is this missing idea we haven't had in our vocabulary. Every time I share this, people go, oh my gosh, I didn't know I could be a hybrid professional. The sum of your parts is the magic. And I want to help people explain that and communicate it, because no longer is a career just a linear path. We're gaining all of these different identities over time. And the stories of how hybrid professionals are working and connecting their identities is what I want to share. So today, my guest is Hope Atlas, and she has had quite the journey. I'm going to dig into her history, but she's been a writer, an bereavement counselor, and a teacher. She's got a lot of interesting background pieces, and suddenly she's learned how to connect these dots. And I think she's even starting a new business, which I'll ask her about, that is the next version of her hybridity. So without further ado, I am going to bring Hope on stage, and here we go. Hello, Hope.
Hi, how are you? I'm so excited to be here. Thank
I'm
you.
so excited to have you.
This is great.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing terrific.
And where did we find you in the world?
Where did we find me?
Where are you located?
Well, I'm in New Jersey.
Awesome. I'm in Colorado, so it's great to just meet you on the other side of the country.
It's great.
So Hope, the way I love to start is with this question of what do you do? And I think I told you earlier, this is a question we obviously use all the time, but it's never been a favorite of mine because it causes anxiety and it can be confusing. And some people don't mind it, and other people's it gives them a panic attack. So we're going to start there anyway, because it really is the question of the day. So Hope, tell us what you do.
I used to hate this question as well, but as I have evolved, I'm more comfortable with it as well. I can say that I'm first a teacher. I have a master's degree in reading education. And from there, I've always been a writer. I was a writer. So as a writer, starting at 15, I started writing. And finally, I started taking workshops, and then I started getting writing published in literary journals. And in May of 2020, I wrote a book on journaling and quotes and self-awareness.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So from there, I just started a small business. It hasn't gone live yet, but it's also a combination of giving people feeling good about themselves and giving them a self-esteem and a purpose. and also giving them something neat to look at, a nice piece of art, and using my quotes. So I've
Awesome.
been combining a lot. I loved how you talked about everything weaving together, because that's exactly how I feel with everything that I do.
I want to get into that in a moment. The weaving is such a curious concept, right? How do we weave our identities? But before we go on, I want to know, what is the title of your book?
My upside down world, journaling using unique quotes and prompts.
And if people want to find that, go to quotehope.com. She's got all kinds of resources, including a number of your quotes. Hope, what is one of your favorite quotes?
Dreams fly by, waiting to be caught. That was my very first quote. I loved quotes all my life. And all of a sudden, one day I decided, why can't I write my own? And this started it.
Where did that idea come from, that you could write your own and you started it? What happened? Do you remember?
Well, I write poetry. And
Okay.
from the start of time, 15 on, I was writing poetry, and poetry and quotes are very similar. And I just started collecting. I have about probably 500 quotes
Wow.
from just that I liked from the internet and what have you. And then I decided I can write quotes. If I can write poetry, I can write quotes. And it just took off from there. I have about 300 quotes in my book.
Wow. That is a lot of quotes. How many do you make on a daily basis?
I have not written a lot lately. But I hope to start again. Right now, I'm working on my own. The quotes that I have, I think, are plenty for journaling and to take off for writing.
Yeah. And it's good to take a break in that creative process, I think. Yeah, it's hard to
It is.
sustain, at least for me. So I'm fascinated. When we were doing our pre-conversation, you mentioned, you started as a teacher and you moved into writing, but you also have this whole mental health interest. Do you want to expand on that and talk about how these things are connected?
Sure. I've always been very interested in mental health. It started on a personal basis. Fortunately, my mom had a lot of mental health issues. But as I said before, it did help me be able to write. That's how writing was my way that I survived, by writing. So from there, from writing for myself, I then took off, and my book is for mental wellness.
Mm,
Journaling is to help one find self-awareness. For journaling is for oneself, to help oneself. So
yeah.
I have a mental health wellness blog on Medium Magazine as well, where I address anxiety and depression specifically, and effects of addiction as well. So I really have worked to make that a very important part of whatever I am doing.
I mean, the more I'm listening to you, the more identities and your different parts of yourself are coming out. Your deep knowledge and familiarity personally with mental health, and then how that led into the personal journey of your own journaling. But then the teacher side of you is kind of taking and morphing that into how you're giving that tool to other people. And you wrote a book that's incorporating the quotes and the journey. It's just, yeah, am I seeing the parts right?
Yes, you are. And my business as well, which hasn't taken off yet, well, hasn't opened yet, is using my quotes, offering my book as well, and giving people a piece of art to let them feel good about themselves, and or give to someone else as well. One part
Mm.
of my store will be random acts of kindness, where I'm giving one part of an item of mine that I specifically want someone else to give to someone to make them smile.
Mm. Oh, how beautiful. I love the layers. It's very thoughtful and just seems like it's really fulfilling your personal passion. Does it feel that way?
It does.
Yeah. Now, you had also mentioned a word to me earlier before we got on live about meshing, these identities and tools that you have together, but they're so different. I think that's how you framed it, right? The meshing of different things. Can you explain more about what that is for you? What does that feel like? What does it mean?
what's meshing? I might take the writing part of myself, and I'm taking now the business part of myself, and all of a sudden I'm taking my quotes and I'm learning about the business, and I'm all of a sudden being able to offer somebody something new. I'm offering something new, but at the same time, it's still not new in terms of want to give someone that feeling of caring for themselves and
Mm.
helping themselves. So
Yeah. So the way I do this in my research, right, is a Venn diagram. And what I'm hearing is an intersection that you're like, I'm creating something new, but it's not new, that tension, because hybridity is the combination of existing things into something else that's altogether new. So if you think about what you're doing, let's say in terms of a Venn diagram, are you familiar with a Venn
yeah.
diagram? I just want to check. Okay. What would you say the different parts of your Venn diagram are if you had to put them in like three categories? And I think writing is really strong. I'm hearing that one. What are the other two that are forming your business?
Mental health,
Mm.
mental health wellness, and what's the I guess teaching.
Mm. I think that's perfect. Usually, the Venn diagram is sort of the foundation. That's one metaphor I use, that if you were building a house, are you using concrete or wood or steel? Like, what are those core parts that build the bigger picture? And for you, it's the mental health, the writing, and the teaching coming together. It sounds like into your new business. That's so exciting.
I'm very
So,
excited.
I study and research hybrid professionals, and I'm just curious. I reached out and said, who wants to be part of my LinkedIn? And you said, I want to be a guest. So why did this topic interest you? Why did you want to come be in this conversation with me?
It just fascinated me. Literally, when I saw you on LinkedIn and I read it, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's me. So many different parts, but all the parts they mesh together. All the parts are me still. They're not
Mm.
all different parts. They're not all separate skills. They're all the skills. Each one has the same skills in it, but are different. I don't, it's,
Totally. And prior to learning this word hybrid, how had you been thinking about yourself? Did you use a different term or expression to try and describe those different parts?
all I could say is there's just so many different parts of me, but
Mhm.
it didn't really quite make sense because it's not really different parts. It's all just
Yeah. Did you ever feel like it was a struggle or it was confusing to people? Was it holding you back? I'm just curious because sometimes I hear that from people.
not that much. I think it's taken me a while to define myself on all the parts. Not many. I had the problem when people say, "What did you do?" I didn't really want to tell anybody what I did because in the beginning the writing was private. That
Mm.
the mental health wasn't something that I wanted to share as much.
Yeah.
So it's evolved.
What gave you that confidence to start sharing and owning that more?
I guess when I finally decided to take some writing courses and I started sharing in a small intimate group my writing and got positive feedback from there,
Mhm.
I decided, okay, I'm going to submit some. And I know it's not the end all to get accepted, but it did help me feel a little validated that there were other people out there who
Yeah.
appreciated my writing. And from there, I was able to now I don't care if I get rejections, but one or two acceptances sort of helped me
Yeah.
on.
I think that makes sense. A lot of what I've learned with identity research and professional identity is that we keep some of these identities hidden. Sometimes it's because we just aren't sure or, we want it to be private. But also, we don't know if the world will accept it or if they'll be validated. And so it's a protection thing, right? It's like your comfort. And so with you, yeah, getting accepted into different journals, getting your writing published, sounds like that was kind of the ingredient that got things going for you.
Yeah, it,
Yeah.
it definitely was.
So since it sounds like you're newer to the concept of hybridity and hybrid professional identity, what questions are on your mind? How can I help you understand your own hybridity or just this idea more?
I guess, how can I expand on it? How can I succeed even more
Mm.
in this idea?
Yeah, great. So there's sort of a developmental spectrum, right, of people that don't even know that hybridity exists. That's sort of like stage one. And then people that are new to this idea and they're like, oh, I'm curious, but I don't know where to start, which maybe you're in that zone. And then I say the next stage is an emerging hybrid, and the final stage is established. And the difference between emerging and established is more self-awareness. So emerging means you kind of sense your hybridity, but you don't know how to control it. You don't quite know how to talk about it. Sometimes you're hybrid, sometimes you're not. Because any hybrid is made up of different identities. And so sometimes they can just go back to being one identity at a time. They don't always have to be hybrid. But people that are more in that established hybridity zone are really confident and comfortable with it. They can articulate it. Sometimes they're not in their hybridity, but it's more of a choice than sort of like a random thing they run into, if that makes sense. So I think from your perspective and where you are in your world, what we talked about a moment ago about your Venn diagram, right, is sort of a step one of let's just get clear about the parts, the different professional identities that you have, Hope. And so we loosely did it as three, because you have to have at least two identities to make an intersection, which is the hybridity. And when we did your three, we shaped them as sort of topical areas, but we didn't define them as identities. So that would really be the first step is if you are doing writing, do you call yourself a writer? And then when you're doing the mindfulness, I don't even know what to, I'm sorry, mental health work, does that mean you're a mental health worker or just an advocate or
I call myself an advocate.
an advocate? Okay. And then the third bucket was the teaching, right?
Mm.
So do you call yourself a teacher?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
I do. And I guess while you're talking, it's forming a little bit even better, even with as an example, even with the business I'm starting, I'm mentoring. I took on a college intern, and I'm paying the college intern to help me with the website. But at the same time, I'm mentoring her and making sure that she's getting contacts and making sure that she's learning from it. And um, so it's a neat learning process in both ways.
Yeah, a teacher can be all shapes and sizes. A mentor is a teacher, a guide is a teacher. I love that you have multiple ways you're thinking about it. So now that we kind of have your Venn diagram in place, that's the stage of starting to put your hybridity into context. And what the big question is we have to answer from that is who are you at the intersection of Hope the teacher, Hope the writer, and Hope the mental health advocate? Those are your three, right? Your
Yeah.
three primary identities. So do you have any sense of who you are, or rather even what you're doing when those three come together? Can you give an example?
I do a lot of writing journaling workshops.
Mm,
That I love because that is the teaching. It's also the mental health awareness, showing the self-awareness and journaling to help ourselves. So
mm,
I think that is so it's teacher, the mental health, and
totally.
writer, using my writing. Often I use my writing quotes as jumping off points for the journaling workshops that I give.
So you just nailed it. Sometimes people can't get to an example that quickly. That was amazing. So you run these writers' workshops to help people process their mental health and explore their personal history, it sounds like. If we had more time, I would say let's go deeper in that and start looking at more specifics of how you do what you do, what's happening in these writer workshops, what kind of phrases or compliments or feedback people are giving you when you're doing that work. Because all of these little pieces come together to help us see details that maybe give you a new identity that is your hybrid identity. So just to give my own example, my primary identities are being an artist. I'm also an educator, a researcher, and a designer. I have four, and four is the upper limit of how many you can have for your hybridity. And when I looked at who I was at the intersection of those, it starts with the actions because it's hard to think about the who first. And the actions I was doing were creating these amazing designs that brought in data, but in a visual infographic and connected the dots and helped people make sense of this very complex entrepreneurial ecosystem. And no one had done that before. I was challenging things. I was creating and disrupting. And so I noticed there was language in there about this creative disruptor. And from that, I started calling myself a creative disruptor. That's my hybrid title because it embraces and encompasses the four parts of me, the artist, researcher, educator, and designer. Does that give you a little context of where you could go with that?
Yeah, it really
What
does.
comes to your mind?
Oh boy. I mean, I don't want to say the main thing that I want to do is the journaling workshops, but I don't know a word for mental health journaling speaker. I don't know.
Yeah. And that's just it. I just want to hold
something like that. Self-awareness speaker. I don't know if those are what you're trying, a little bit of what you're talking about.
Yeah, 100%. So Hope, this is where you get to channel your creativity and go into that space of your quote, the dreamer, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is where I start people with brainstorming and capturing just all kinds of words. You don't have to know right off the top of your head, and that would be nearly impossible. So you need to just start writing down these different words that are coming to you: the self-awareness speaker, the mindfulness helper, the journal workshop wayfinder. And it's by looking at what you're really doing in those moments. I have a whole page in my workbook that is just professional identity words because people need some jump starts. Mm-hmm. And the word storyteller is in there, and visionary, and problem solver, and planner, and supporter, and just great language to help you be like, oh, these words, and it sort of gets your mind going. So I'm happy to share that tool with you afterwards.
That would be just awesome.
Awesome. And then just play with it. Let it be fun. And because you're a writer, you won't be scared of words. Sometimes people get intimidated and they get locked in. I think it's all about synonyms. I call it professional identity math. You can mesh words together, literally, like people take educator and entrepreneur and call themselves the edupreneur. One person, she called herself the spiritual spark plug. So you can combine fun words to really make it unique and appropriate for you.
You just got me so excited.
I'm so glad.
I really did. Wow, I've never thought of things like this.
Yeah, it's the permission. It goes back to that, right? Just like the permission that you can journal and write and do your own quotes. You said that very early on. Why don't I write my own quotes? Mm-hmm. You can create your own professional identity, and I call that your hybrid identity. And that is the job title that you give yourself that makes you stand out, that people are like, oh, we need Hope, the mindful journal wayfinder, whatever you are. Awesome. Hope, what's going through your mind right now?
Words. I'm like words. I'm thinking, okay, I'm totally back in. Okay, what can I do? Self-awareness, what, or mental health speaker, wellness writer.
Totally. And this is where we need like a whiteboard, and we need like 2 more friends, because it really starts snowballing. People are like, oh, this, oh, that. Yeah. Super fun. That was a great question. I can pause there. Do you have any other questions about hybridity on your mind?
Oh my goodness. I would just love to read more about what you do, because there's just so much.
Well, you've given me a great opportunity to just mention. So this is my book, more than my title, The Power of Hybrid Professionals in a Workforce of Experts and Specialists. And I also have a workbook that goes with it. So the book that I have on the screen is really about who hybrid professionals are, what they do, what the intersections mean, how to explore that. And it gives some ideas about the future of work and how hybrid professionals are becoming a more powerful segment of the workforce. But the workbook has the tools inside of it. It really shows people the steps that I was just going through of like, okay, think about your identities, draw the Venn diagram, do this radical brainstorm on words because you want to invent and deconstruct yourself. So that's a little taste of everything.
Oh, it's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Hope, it feels like we just had this nice little creative moment between us. And I want to give you room to explore that on your own. Anything else you want to share with the audience today about what you're doing, or any final comments before we end?
No, if you just, I think you have it all. You have my website down.
Yeah.
Somebody wants to just look into my writing. I do a lot of, aside from the mental health, I write about grief and loss as well. So if you just want to check out other writing, what I do, and check out my book as well. So thank you.
No, this is great. We just got a little note. Someone who's watching live, Kelsey, said she'd love to join a writer's workshop to help her work through her hybridity. And I'm like, maybe hope there's a collaboration in the future for you and I. So we'll have to talk.
Oh, that'd be fun.
And I think just, I love that you're doing this work in the world. If people want to follow me, also come to morethanmytitle.com or follow on social at morethanmytitle. Hope, it's been a pleasure to just get to know you more and hear why hybrid identity and hybrid professionals was something you were curious about, you could feel, but you didn't know about it. So I'm really grateful I got to share my tools and my research with you today. It looks like I gave you a lot to think about.
You did. I'm so excited. Thank you so much. I want to talk more with you now.
Oh, awesome. Okay, well, you know where to find me offline. We can follow up with each other. To everyone else, have a great day. And if you also want to be a future guest, reach out to me. I would love to have you on a LinkedIn Live to talk about your professional identity, just like I've shared with Hope today. So we'll take off, say bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody.